we're just going to roll right into this. And so this is one of the core curriculum courses in the Keller Williams University. You know, it's when you think about sort of the anchor courses that are really important for everyone's business, certainly Ignite is one of those for foundational skills. And if you haven't had a chance to take a look at Ignite 2.0 yet, it's just a remarkable course. And then there's Lead Generation 3612.3 that really gets into developing your unique value proposition and determining your market and all that sort of stuff, right? But win with buyers and win with sellers are really two of the anchors in this curriculum, because they really get to what are the best practice models that top agents employ to really have success in these areas. So this is a course that has been around for a while. I have added some content to it, not much. I haven't really taken anything out of it. But there's certain things that I've added to this which you wouldn't necessarily find in your PowerPoints if you download this online. I want to just take a minute, and I guess I should have done this before we jumped into the PowerPoint, but I do want to share my screen, and I just want to show you where you're going to find this stuff, right? Because I want you to take a chance to go and download these materials. You know, Keller Williams University is a treasure trove of all kinds of information that's available for you free of charge. You know, when I teach a lot of these classes, people ask me all the time, you know, how much do I have to pay? How much does it cost? And, you know, this stuff is free of charge. And so what you do is you simply go up here to the My KW page. You go to the education button right here, and it will take you to KW University. And when you're at the university, this very first box here that says courses is where you're going to want to go. You're going to click on the course box. And then every course in the KW University is here. All these little boxes represent a different class that can be taught. And as you scroll down to the bottom, because they're listed alphabetically, you're going to go down to where it says Win with Sellers, which is this box right here. You're simply going to click on it, and it is going to take you to what we call the landing page, right? And in the landing page is just a brief description of who the course is for. There's an option here to purchase the course materials already printed and have them shipped to your home. My experience with that is because the shipping charges sometimes can be fairly high, it actually is probably cheaper to print these on your own and bind them yourself, but check into that. But what you would do is simply go to the tab here that says materials. And on the materials tab, you're going to see here the student files and the instructor files. You're just going to go down to the student files for the manual. This one that says cover, front cover, back cover, and spine, they truly are just these covers, right? So you don't need that. But download the manual here. When you click on this, it's a PDF. You can download the whole thing. And in this 171 pages worth of content here, there's going to be an appendix in there that has some really important tools that you're going to be wanting to take advantage of using. So I'm going to encourage you to go and download the manual, right? You don't necessarily have to have it in front of you while we're going through this class. You certainly can if you want to, but again, I have taken a little bit of liberties and I've added some additional content to it that may not be in the manual that you have. But does anybody have any questions on where to download this stuff? I still see some more people jumping into the waiting room, so I have one eye on the waiting room and one eye on you guys.
Yeah, I just came in, and so you go to kwconnect.com, and then there's like—
You go to mykw.kw. Let me show you the breadcrumb trail real fast. You just go right back here to your KW page, right? And when you're here, whatever way you get here, when you're here, you go to the education tab, and that brings you into the university. You go to the courses box here, and then all the courses are listed alphabetically. This is a W, so it's Win with Sellers. It's right here. And then the content material is right behind this materials tab right there. All right? Okie dokie, guys. You got it. Let's get back into the PowerPoint. And let me start with this question. Why are you guys here? Of all the things you could be doing on a Tuesday in July, why are you given an hour of your life for this course over the next 6 sessions? What is it you're hoping to get? Anybody?
Ways to improve our
see
business.
A chat box opening up here because you're here. That's very sweet. What are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to learn?
Heyl, Punita here. I just feel like I learned something from any of your classes.
Yeah.
And so I agree with Teresa. I mean, it's yes, obviously it's about sellers, but I just feel like whenever I take any session with you, I have some aha moments.
Okay. Anything
That's
in particular
what I hope to learn.
That's great. And I love the fact that people are so learning based. It's sort of such a core value of successful folks is to be learning based. Does anybody have a particular thing that they're hoping that at the end of the series they walk away with having learned how to do, or something in specific that we can just make sure we pay attention to? Ways to improve our business. All right, Mitchell, I got your name right this time. All right, let's jump into it then. And if you have other thoughts as we go, don't hesitate. We're going to start with some introductions to models and mindset. And it's, again, these are core courses. And one of the things that all of these courses are built around are best practice models, right? And so when you think about modeling, Gary says that when you interview the very top people and ask them what their biggest challenge is, invariably, they'll tell you that it's mindset. Keeping your mindset strong, focused, and positive amidst all the challenges that you encounter on your way up to the top, and then staying there. For the vast majority of really high-level performing agents, what they say, it's not leads really. It's not even lead conversion, which I personally believe is a bigger challenge for most agents than lead generation. It's actually lead conversion, I think. But what Gary says is the biggest issue for most is really keeping your mind in the right spot. And anybody ever have that experience? We've sort of talked about mindset in a lot of classes, but does anybody have any experience in terms of, the ups and downs of this industry, and just kind of keeping your head in the right place is a challenge at times? There's this sort of sequence, and I touched upon it in the last cycle. This is one of the things that I added into this content, but I think it's so critical. When you think about the relationship to mindset and action, here's what I'll tell you. In my experience, a lot of times we believe that we don't take action until we feel like we're in the right place. When I'm in the right mood, I'll do it, And there's this kind of flywheel here of your thoughts and beliefs at the top here, which leads to how you feel about things, right? And how you feel about things determines what you do. And what you do determines the results that you get. And then the results that you get reinforce your thoughts and your beliefs. And a lot of people think that in order to be successful, we've got to start with a strong mindset so that we can feel the way we need to feel to take the right action. And what I'm here to tell you is that for most people who perform at a high level, what they find is the place where they jump into the cycle is not waiting until their mindset is right. They jump in at the point of action. Change the way that you look at things. Who are my bold grads? Who can finish out that sentence for me? Change the way you look at things.
And the things that you look at will change.
There you go, Deborah. I knew you'd know that one. And so here's the thing. It's just a matter of what do you do? What are you going to do differently, right? Because the tail really can wag the dog sometimes. It's just like, back when we used to be able to go to the gym, and I'm so disappointed that I don't see the gyms coming back anytime soon. And I've come to realize that COVID-19 stands for the 19 pounds that I've gained over these past 3 months, and I need to get back to the gym. But there were many times that I didn't feel like it. And yet when I pushed myself to go and I didn't feel like it anyway, by the time that I was there, I was in the right space. It's the actions that sometimes get your head in the right place. And so the first thing in terms of models and actions to just keep in mind is that it's never going to feel like the right time a lot of times. You're just going to have to do it. You're going to have to jump and change your actions. And who really informed Gary Keller's thinking on this was actually Tony Robbins. Back in when Gary, he talks about in the MREA when he was in college at Baylor University, that one of his professors saw Gary as an entrepreneurial young guy who had all kinds of views and all kinds of opinions. And his professor said to him, Gary, people have lived before you, and you would be wise to learn from the example of others, and not try to feel like you have to make it up yourself everywhere you go. And he took that advice and he kind of sat with it. But it was actually years later, and in fact, it was when Gary read this book. It was Tony Robbins, Unlimited Power, where Tony Robbins really said to Gary, look, the most successful people are modelers. The most successful people, they look at who is succeeding to the level that you want to, and then study them and learn from them and copy them and do whatever it takes to do what they do so that you can kind of become what they've become. It's jumping in at the point of action as opposed to the point of mindset. But it was Tony Robbins that really got Gary thinking about how important it is to have best practice models available for people to copy. And what Gary says is the movers and shakers of the world are often the professional modelers, people who've mastered the art of learning everything they can by following other people's experience rather than their own. That comes right out of page 36 of the MREA. And so that's why all of these anchor courses are really built around best practice models, right? And so what we do is we recognize that people who are entrepreneurial by nature, and by entrepreneurial, I mean people who are sort of the visionaries, the risk takers, the people that are impatient to get things done, that they want to make an impact in the world. You know, they have this vision of doing things differently, because what we know is that entrepreneurs don't look at problem solution as how do I find a way to just become a copycat business. What an entrepreneur says is, where's there a gap? Where's there a need that I can build a business that can fill? And what entrepreneurs tend to do is they tend to live outside of the lines. They tend to color outside the lines all the time. And what tends to happen is they come into an endeavor like real estate and they try to make it up on their own. They have all kinds of ideas of things that they're going to do and how they're going to have the coolest new marketing strategy and how they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And what Gary says is that if you want to be successful, there's a couple of key models that you have to build as your platform, and then learn to become creative on the top of it. If you put the creativity on the base that you try to build upon, your business won't stand, right? So many of you have seen this imagery before, but we drive it home again and again and again because it's so critical. So what are the best practices then of top agents? Well, there's a couple of key things that top agents do consistently, and they do really well. One is they're very clear. They have a system for prioritizing and managing their leads. They recognize that the role is a decision facilitator. You know, I've often said that sales is influence, right? But we're not influencing people to buy or list or rent. What we're influencing people to do is to make a decision and take action, right? Our job as decision facilitators. And in order to do that, we really need to have mastery over the tools that we use, the language that we use, our scripts, our conversation tracks, which we'll talk about in a class later this month that I've written on the language of scripts. The model says that top agents really have some level of accountability in their life. And that accountability could be a coach. Frequently, it's a coach. I've had a coach now for years and years and years. I still have a coach. And it doesn't have to be a paid relationship, though. Just someone who's invested in your success, who knows what your goals are, and you report to on a regular basis to say, this is what I intended to do. This is what I did do. This is what I'm going to do next. That what we know is that just having written goals alone increases your likelihood of achieving them by 37%. And then having an accountability partner who you report into on a regular basis improves your ability to convert and achieve those goals by 78%. So an accountability relationship is key. They know their numbers. There's another course, the class, a one-off that we're doing later this month on really knowing your numbers in the business. And we'll touch on some of that today. They leverage technology. They use their time very efficiently and effectively, right? And those two things are very different. Who can jump in and just kind of tell me your understanding of the difference between using your time efficiently versus using your time effectively? What's the difference in your mind?
Okay, Hal, it's Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
How you doing? Okay, people say, oh, you always look busy. Well, being busy isn't always being productive, using your time efficiently to, capture sellers, buyers. You always had to be promoting your next 3 months of business, not just today. You're busy today, showing homes, getting listings, but are you marketing for the 3 months out, being productive? That's
exactly.
probably how I understand that.
Yeah, for sure. And efficiently is, if I'm using my time efficiently and I'm not wasting time, right? If I'm using my time effectively, I'm achieving my outcomes.
Right. If you're showing, If you're showing buyers, if you're showing buyers that really aren't ready to buy, or you're working with listings that aren't selling, and you're spending a lot of your time trying to market them and you really have to figure out your top priorities.
Yeah, absolutely right. You're spot on there. Because if you're showing buyers who aren't really ready to buy, you're not being efficient or effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last best practice of top agents is they recognize that everything that happens to them, they have to own. They're 100% responsible for their success or their failure. And that one is hard sometimes for people to kind of embrace and wrap their heads around, because there's sometimes that bad things happen which are outside of our control that impact what we do and how we do it. The pandemic is a classic example. None of us are responsible for the pandemic, and it's easy to just kind of say, well, this was out of my control and this is the reason why I didn't achieve my goals this year. But the best practices of the top agents is they don't accept that. There's another book. I'm pulling all kinds of book off my bookshelf today that I just want to share with you. If you haven't read this one, Extreme Ownership, which is how U.S. Navy SEALs lead and win. And this is a really fascinating book because it really speaks to when you adopt a mindset that everything, when you're the SEAL team captain, then there's only one way to evaluate. It's either the mission succeeded or the mission failed. And if the mission failed, it's your fault. You're the captain. It's your job to make sure it didn't fail. It's the same way with your business, that really top agents recognize that they're 100% responsible for their successes and they're 100% responsible for their failures. And that one is a tricky one. And as a coach, I find that helping people to kind of own where their DNA is in the successes and failures is sometimes a bit of a challenge. I'm looking at the chat box now because I think I've managed the waiting room to the extent that people are going to be joining us today. And I see some comments in the chat box about knowing your numbers, knowing the outcomes, knowing your results, right? All kinds of great comments in the chat box. I'll be paying closer attention to that now. As we move forward here, the question that to ask yourself is, think about your listing appointments. What did you do in the process of your listing appointments that enabled you to be successful? And when you think about those listing appointments that you didn't get, what did you do? And a lot of times people say, well, it's not anything that I did. I gave a great presentation. However, the other guy was just willing to do it at 3% or whatever it was. Well, guess what? You didn't create enough value to overcome that. And so what did you do in the process that caused you to not get that listing? Do you have any kind of limiting beliefs that keep you from achieving your goals? And if you do, how can you redirect those, right? That's the mindset of top agents, is extreme ownership. Everything rises and falls with them, right? And so I'm going to just throw a poll question out here. We do these poll questions from time to time. And this is not a question that has a right or wrong answer. This is just an action inventory right now. What I want to do is I want to just kind of put a question up here and just answer this question in terms of which one of these actions right now are you currently doing in your real estate business? But I just want to, just for your own knowledge, we'll launch this poll. We'll run this poll here for probably about a minute. And I just want to take a minute for you to just go through these, read these, and then select it if it's something that you're currently doing as a practice in your real estate business. And if not, then skip over it. But I just want to see where we are right now in the beginning of this class. This is anonymous as well, so you're not going to have to worry about your name showing up on it. There's a fair number of questions here, so we'll leave this one open a little bit. We've got it open now for about 45 seconds. I'll probably leave it up for about another 30 seconds. We've got 7 or almost a little over half of you have answered. Again, no right answers. It's just kind of a litmus test. All right, 10 more seconds. We'll close it down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're done. All right, here's the results of this poll, just to kind of get a sense of where we are. Probably the thing that most people are doing really right now in their business, if you look at this actively use social media, we have 82% of you that are actively doing that. probably the things that are the least being done. There's a tie here between, I've been in the business 2 years and I'm consistently closing 16 transactions per year, listing side transactions, and that ties with, they have a business website that captures leads, okay? And again, the purpose of this survey is just simply to kind of ask these questions and start to think about, what would I need to do differently so that that happened, right? What would it look like? What would I have to change? Who would I have to become that I'm not yet so that I could close 16 units a year, right? Other things that we have pretty strong results for, using Command as your primary CRM. I know that a lot of folks have used other CRMs and sometimes they've been a little bit reluctant to let go of that, especially as Command is evolving. But all technology is evolving, and I think that right now, at least in our group where I train and coach, a lot of our biggest teams have switched over to Command, and they're finding that's been a real productive change for them. I attend training at one training event a year, specific goals for the number of appointments. I have a coach. 2 of you have coaches. As a coach, that makes me smile. Again, what I want you to do with these questions is just see where you are right now, right? And see how you answer those questions. And if you did not answer the question affirmatively to the positive, then just kind of ask yourself, what would need to happen for me to kind of change that and to do some of that, right? And what would be the difference in my business if that was the case? All right, let me close out that poll question. We've got a couple of folks joining us here in the waiting room. So you can kind of think about how you're going to show up over these next few weeks. There's 3 ways that you can participate in this course. You know, version number 1 is what we call the prisoner. The prisoner, I'm not a big fan of prisoners. I hope nobody's here because they're being held hostage. Like you did something and you had to just serve community service and the judge said, well, look, you know, I in lieu of putting you in jail, I'm going to make you take one of Heyl's classes, right? I hope that's not why you're here, right? But the prisoner is somebody who's here not really of their own will, but because they're told they had to be here. They don't really engage. They spend this time with their screen closed, their camera off, their mic off, and they're on their phone and they're on their social media. And they really hold on to their limiting beliefs. They don't challenge themselves because they come in with a closed fist, right? They don't come in with an open palm. The vacationer, and I see a lot of vacationers come into training classes. The vacationer is somebody who says, you know what? Coming to class is a whole lot more fun than doing lead generation. So I'm just going to go to these classes all day long. And they spend as much time kind of hanging out and chatting, and they're not really purposeful. They don't really have any vision of what they're looking to get. They just hope that, you know, I'm doing something related to my business, and maybe I'll learn a nugget that I'll use just in case somewhere down the line. And boy, this sure beats the hell out of going to work. And then the third way you can show up is the explorer. And I hope that you show up as the explorer, that you listen attentively and you kind of think about what we're talking about and you think about how it impacts your business and you ask questions and you throw questions into the chat. And what I'll tell you is right now, I would prefer if you have a question, just unmute yourself and ask it. There's so many moving parts right now with waiting rooms and chat boxes that I don't want a chat question to linger there. But the explorer asks questions, meaningful questions. And here's the key. The explorer comes with this approach that says learning is the basis for my action plan. I don't learn just to be the smartest in the room. I learn because there's something that I need to do. There's an action that I need to take. I'm going to jump into that flywheel of mindset and action and behavior at the point of action. But in order to do it, I need to learn something that I don't know now. And that's the explorer that comes into this class, to learn that missing piece so that you can take the action, so that you can change the outcomes and change the whole flywheel there, right? All right, let's move along. Here's the model. We talked about best practice models. For those of you that were in the Win with Buyers series, which just closed last month, the model looks fairly similar, right? The seller service cycle. And if you really want to have a tongue twister, it's the 7-step seller service cycle. I'm not going to say that again. And it starts with lead generation. This is where we're going to go over these next few weeks. We're going to talk about lead conversion today. And then session 2 is going to talk a little bit about the pre-listing process. What are the things that you do in preparation of going on the listing consultation appointment? We're going to really advocate for a pre-listing package. We'll talk about what goes into that and how you create that and how you deliver that. We'll move on to the actual listing consultation. And again, like in Win with Buyer series, we're going to talk about a consultative model as opposed to a presentation model. One of the things that every single real estate agent learns how to do is to give a listing presentation. And it's really hard to differentiate yourself in presentation mode because the action alone looks and feels like every other real estate agent they could talk to. You may have some unique value that you can tuck into your presentation, but where you're really, really, really going to separate yourself is you can guide them through a consulting process where they learn and they self-explore and they self-discover why they need what they need in selling their home and what their goals are and what their motivations are and what would make this a world-class experience for them. And they learn what's really going on in the market so that they can have success. We're going to go through that model. And then we're going to do servicing and marketing. Once you list the home, what are the ways that you're going to get that home in front of the most number of people to generate the best outcome? And I'm telling you right now, it feels today a little bit like it did for me in 2003 when I first got into real estate. There was so much pent up volume that my manager said to me when I was a new agent, she says, I could take any one of you guys. I could chain you to a telephone pole. And as long as you had a lockbox key in your hand, someone is going to cut that chain and force you to sell them a house. There's that much demand. And it's feeling like that again, at least for now. And in that kind of a model, you don't even necessarily have to have, it seems, the most creative kind of a marketing plan to generate huge interest. But there's right ways and wrong ways to do it, right? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about offers and negotiations, contract to close, and post-close systems. That's the model that we're going to roll through over these series. And today we're going to jump right in to lead conversion. And so what I said was top agents know their numbers. And what specific numbers do top agents know? Well, you know, here's the thing, that top listing agents especially, but all agents, they keep track of how many new contacts do you make every week. And it's not necessarily how many people are you engaging in your database as follow-ups. That's an important number as well to track. But the top of the funnel, sort of the top of the sales funnel, how many new contacts are you putting in to your funnel on a weekly basis? And then the question becomes, how many of those actually meet your definition of a lead? And everybody's business is a little bit different in terms of that. And we'll talk about how the things that influence your decision about who's a lead and who's not a lead. And I want to be careful because the language that we use now in command, it kind of blurs these ideas a little bit to me. In the command language, we're calling a lead anyone that we have contact information and we can have one-way communication. If I know your name and I have a way to push a message to you, then you're a lead. And once you engage and we have two-way conversation, at that point you're a contact. That's the way we're defining it in the language of command, KW command. Historically, we kind of looked at it the other way around. We kind of looked at it that was a contact was anybody that I could contact, and a lead was someone that actually raised their hand. I don't want to blur these concepts here. When I'm talking about a lead, I'm talking about here in B at least, how many of the contacts that you're talking to meet your definition of someone who is ready, willing, and able to do business within a time frame that makes sense to you. And we'll talk about, again, in a few minutes, how to think that through. But everybody sometimes has a different definition of who's a lead and who's not a lead, right? How many of the leads become actual appointments, right? And then how many appointments turn into actual listings? These are the key number conversions that agents have to track. And the math is real simple. The contact to lead conversion is the leads divided by the total number of contacts, right? Leads to appointments is appointments kept divided by the total number of leads. And then appointments to listings is listings taken divided by the total number of appointments that you go on. And it's real important that we track these numbers. And so knowing what these numbers represent and knowing what your conversion rates are really critical, because it tells you how many people do I need to generate in my lead generation strategies, and how many people do I need to generate who meet the criteria of someone that's a lead. Because if we're not generating people that are ready, willing, and able to do business, if we're just generating people to fill our database, while that's important, the conversion into closings will be slower, right? Converting leads to appointments and converting appointments to listings are huge drivers in your economic success. They both accomplished through having really strong consulting skills and a firm grasp of scripts and dialogues. And I would even add to that, that it's really rooted in having a prospecting and marketing strategy that's purposeful in attracting the person who you define as a lead. The ad copy that you use is crafted in a way that will resonate with the person that you're looking for, right? But knowing your numbers, the first step, and I'm not going to ask anybody here in this group to kind of tell me where your conversions are, but I also know this: most agents don't know. Even good agents don't know a lot of times. Even the best agents many times have a feel for it, but they don't really know precisely. And that's not the way to run a business. That's the way to participate in a hobby. Nothing wrong with kind of having a vague idea of what your conversion rates are if you're not real serious. But if you're really, really trying to run a business, you have to know your numbers. You absolutely have to know them, and you have to know them stone cold, right? Those are the key conversion rates that you want to track. So as we get into leads, right, we remember in the MREA, this notion of leads, listings, and leverage as this sort of the triangle, the 3 L's of real estate. And what Gary says is to be successful, you just have to have leads. Until you have enough leads to meet or exceed your goals. And again, the definition of lead here is someone who's raising their hand and says, yes, I need help buying, selling, renting, investing in real estate, taking a real estate action. Until you have enough of those people, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, everybody has 2 jobs, their chosen profession and lead generation. And so at the base of the platform is having enough leads, and yet certain kinds of leads are better than others. Listing leads are better than buyer leads. And the reason for that is they are the most leveraged, meaning if we understand buyers as the byproduct of listings, the way that you get into relationship with the buyer is to control the thing that they want to buy. Because if you control the thing that they want to buy, they're just going to come and find you. If you don't control the thing that they want to buy, you're going to have to go find them yourself. And it just is less efficient, right? It's less effective. It's more time consuming, it's more expensive. Listing leads are better in your business because not only do you get to market the property, but that marketing of that property brings you the buyer's leads, and that's what the leverage looks like. But at the very base of this is leads. If you don't have enough listing leads, nothing else matters. Nothing else, right? And what we're looking for is how do we pre-qualify and really determine, do you meet my definition of who's a lead and who's not, right? Are you ready and willing and able to take action now, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't follow people if they're not ready to take action now, but everything is based on how far away from now are you, right? Everything is based on that. And when we think about ready, willing, and able, from the able standpoint, are you financially able to do it right now if you wanted to? And there's a lot of folks that are ready to list their house, and there's a lot of folks that are willing to list their house, but they're just not financially able to right now. Maybe they have a negative equity position. Maybe they're who knows what, right? But they just can't do it, right? They're ready. You know, are you really motivated to take action now? Well, I can't really do it yet because, well, then, you know, when would you be ready, right? And willing, you know, the willingness issue really comes down to, are you willing to accept market value, right? Are you willing to sell your house at what the market deems it's worth right now? And if you aren't, then you're not willing, right? And so we need to have a system for how are we going to evaluate ready, willing, and able. And, you know, here's the thing. It was Tony DeCello, I believe, who said that the busier you are, the tighter the window is going to be on that. Meaning, I always believed for my business, it looked a little bit like this. For me, an A lead was ready, willing, and able to take action within 30 days. The definition that Tony would give is ready, willing, and able to act in 14 days. if you've got a lot of volume to attend to, you're going to need people to take action faster in order to be seen as an A lead. If you don't have as much volume, you could make that a wider berth. For me, it was 30 days. A B lead is ready, willing to take action in 15 to 60 days. For my business, it was 30 to 90 days, right? And then a C lead, by this definition, is anybody who's ready, willing, and able to do business within 61 days or more. For me, it was 90 days or more. But the key is ready, willing, and able to do business. It comes down to, are you ready to make a decision to take action, right? And we need to have a lead classification system, and it can be whatever is right for your business. It's your business. You get to decide. And the thing that's going to impact that is largely the volume of leads in your pipeline, right? The more people that you have, the more you're going to ask them to step up to a higher hurdle to qualify as an A lead or a B lead. But you need to have some time to think it through, and you need to have a system. The best practice model is that everyone in our database who we have called a lead, and now in the command language, what are we calling that person who raises their hand? We're calling them opportunities, right? That's what we're calling them in command, an opportunity. We have to have a system for determining who makes the cut, right? And once they make the cut, are you an A lead, a B opportunity, a C opportunity? How are we going to score you, right? Super, super important. And we need to be thinking that through. Now, some do's and don'ts of lead generation, and what high producing agents do and things that they don't do. High producing agents, they practice highly productive lead generation. Somebody unmute themselves and tell me, what does highly productive lead generation look like? What do you think? What's the difference between highly productive and not so productive lead generation?
Highly know what they want, ready to go, have pre-approval ready, and things like that. Assuming.
Okay. Yeah, a highly productive lead generation is, in the way I'm looking at it, to admit you hit the nail on the head in terms of ready, willing, and able, for sure. Highly productive lead generation is highly leveraged. It's the kind of lead generation that puts me in front of the most quality leads, meaning ready, willing, and able to do business in the shortest period of time with the least amount of effort on my part. That is truly highly productive. For me, that was open houses. There's lots of other things that people do, but I found that in open houses, I was able to get in front of more people that were ready, willing, and able to fit my definition of a lead, which is point number 2. High producing agents practice highly productive lead generation that puts them in the pathway of people that fit their definition of a lead. For me, if you were going to do business anytime within a year, you were going to be a lead. The new language of command would be opportunity, but I'm going to follow you differently. And for me, open houses was the most effective way to do it in a leveraged way. Highly productive agents, they feed and they organize their database daily. They grow their database daily. They have effective smart plans, right? They have plans that really move people through the process and nurture those relationships. They follow up quickly. We'll talk about that in a second. They practice consistently. We talk about mastery being time on task over time, right? And there's importance in practicing our scripts and our dialogues and having listing conversations and practicing those again and again and again. You know, an NFL football team, if we ever get to see professional sports again in our lifetime, please say yes. But an NFL football team will practice 60 hours a week sometimes for a 1-hour football game. And they just practice again and again and again consistently, purposefully. Here's what high producing agents don't do. They don't rely on marketing, and specifically internet marketing, as their sole source of business. They don't change or add methods of lead generation just kind of willy-nilly. That's one of the things that I see agents struggle with, especially in the very beginning of their business career. We have this tool called a GPS. What is my goal? What are my priorities? How am I going to take my lead generation activities and narrow them into a business priority that is something that I'm trying to accomplish? Whether it's making my database work as a priority, whether it's generating market share inside of a geographic footprint, which is a priority. they have very specific strategies on what they're going to do to make those leads show up. And they don't just randomly start throwing stuff out there. And we make it complicated sometimes in this company because there are truly so many ways that you can generate leads. And as a company that is so training and learning based, we put you in the pathway of so many things to take a look at and say, hey, let's look at this person who's doing it this way. Let's take a look at this person who's doing it this way. And it's really easy sometimes to say, ooh, that makes good sense. Let me try that. And you try it for a little bit, but you don't build momentum. And so you're like, that's not working. Let me try this instead. And you try that for a little bit, but you don't build momentum. And then you decide, well, let me try this. And what happens is we kind of change our methods, just kind of willy-nilly. We dabble here, we dabble there, and nothing gets traction. Nothing builds momentum. And as a result, we don't get the outcomes that we want, right? What agents that are high achievers do is they purposefully pick what lead generation methodology do they believe they would be most capable of executing, and they stick with it. And if something shows up that's better, and if they have a reason to believe that it would be better than what I'm doing now, then they replace it. But they do it purposefully with thought. They don't just wait for the leads to show up. They go out there and they make them happen. And here's the other thing. High-producing agents don't skimp out on the follow-up. They follow up. I was talking to a guy who's running one of the mega teams up in Bergen County yesterday, and one of his big frustrations is that he's spending a lot of money generating leads from a variety of different sources to give to his team, and he feels that his team is not following up in a way that's turning into conversion. And we're thinking about strategies of how could we help his team learn how to convert better. But it's stunning how many people don't follow up on leads. I saw a study one time that said open house guests, so go back to opens for a second, that when they took a look at people that were visiting open houses within a certain time frame and they followed up with those open house guests, what they found was about 2/3 of them, a little over 60%, never heard from the agent again after the open house. That's tragic. There is so much time and energy spent in generating that opportunity. To not follow up on it is foolish. And to recognize, and we'll talk about the sales pipeline in a minute, that some of the leads that you generate are going to be very early in the game, meaning they're not prepared to take action now. Their decision-making would be farther off in the future. And what we tend to do is if we've generated an opportunity that's too far off in the future, it's at a point where they're not ready to talk to us yet. And so we follow up and we call them and they don't respond, and we text them and they don't respond. And then after a few touches, we just say, this lead sucks. We just throw it to the wind and we don't follow up any longer. Huge, huge, huge mistake. Because by virtue of the fact that they raised their hand somehow and got into your world, got into your database, even if their decision-making is far off in the future, what we need to do is we need to follow them longer. Right? We need to follow them longer and have a system to do that. The model is to capture the leads and then to connect. And in the connection, make a decision. Are you ready to go to an appointment right now? Is it time for us to actually meet? Or if you're not ready to go to an appointment now, do we cultivate this relationship a little bit longer, right? And the speed matters. You know, the conversation I was having with this mega agent yesterday was that he was feeling that his agents were following up too slowly. National Association of Realtors says that 85% of the public will work with the first or second agent that gets them to a meeting. Not necessarily the first person that talks to them, but the first person who gets them to an appropriate meeting. 85% of the time, they're not interviewing a bazillion people. If you can get me to a meeting, it's important. What Gary says is the speed of conversion is more important than presentation. The competitive battle is almost always single-handedly won simply by getting the appointment before someone else. I remember when I first came into the business and I was being mentored by someone who said, if the seller is going to interview a bunch of different agents, you want to be the last one, because then there's no one else to talk to and they're going to be able to make a decision. And what I learned the hard way is that if I got to be the last one, many times a stronger agent who got to be the first one signed the listing and I never got in. And so I changed my approach on that. I wanted to be first, right? And what Gary says is if you're first, you don't even have to be best. Many times being first matters. Now, The thing that we've got to decide then is in our lead generation, our lead conversion, what are we trying to have happen here? You know, a successful lead conversion outcome really comes down to this. Is there a reason for you and I to meet right now? Have I evaluated you're ready, willing, and able, and we should get together? And if it's not time for that, then the next question is, who do you know that is in that decision-making window that would need to get together? Or who do you know who was at least thinking about buying, selling, investing, renting, and meets my definition of a lead that I can talk to? You know, when you're having a lead generation conversation, any of those things are great. If it's not time for you, who do you know? And they always, always, always find a way to strengthen the relationship. They never hang up the phone with finding a way to stay in touch, which means that you have to get into these conversations with a predetermined sense of what can I provide a value that would give me the right, where I could earn the right to follow up with you again. If I haven't created enough value for you, then I don't have the right to bother you a second time. So what would it take? What would I have to do? Who would I have to be? What would I have to provide so that you were willing to hear from me again? And any of those outcomes is an amazingly good lead generation call. I'd love to have an appointment, but the likelihood of timing that decision-making window is pretty small. I wrote here, make a play, and it reminded me of an interview I saw one time with John Elway, the former quarterback of the Denver Broncos, who said, and I think I mentioned this if you were with the Winwood Buyer series, that when you think about professional football, the athlete, the quarterback who wins is not necessarily the one who has the best arm strength or the best footwork. If you're talented enough to start in the NFL, you can win. The quarterback who wins the most is the one who decides where he can make a play and consistently moves the ball. And if I can't make a play here, I'm going to make it there. If I can't make a play here, I'm going to make it there. If I can't make it there, I'm going to keep it myself, but I'm going to move the ball. And if I can't get an appointment, I'm going to quickly not force that. Then I'm going to change gears and see for a referral. And if there's not one right there, I'm not going to force it. Because like a quarterback, if you're trying to force a play to happen and it's not happening, you're going to get sacked. I'm going to figure out where can I make a play. And frequently it's right here. Frequently in lead generation and lead conversion, the play isn't at the appointment or referral level. The play is, can I get you into my world and stay in touch? You know, Tim Heyl, if you know Tim, he is one of the mega stars of Keller Williams and back in Austin, Texas and Houston, Texas. And if you look at him on the Outfront magazine, he's a pretty young dude. And we brought him up to Bergen County a year or so ago. And one of the things I heard Tim say, which really struck me, was my lead generation changed when I stopped looking for appointments. Yes, I wanted the appointments. I needed the appointments. But my lead generation, when I stopped really looking for the appointment as my primary goal and made my primary goal, can I create enough value for you that you'd let me hang around, that you'd let me put you in my database and nurture you over time? And what Tim says is he changed his numbers conversion. Instead of looking to convert to appointments, he was trying to convert every lead generation session to how many new nurtures could he put into his funnel. Because what he believed is that if you could fill his funnel with people and nurture those relationships over time, when the time was right for them to have an appointment, that would materialize on its own. What he said was, when I was looking for appointments and throwing away the potential nurtures, my business was here. When I recognized it was all about building a world of people that I could get into relationship with, add value in their lives, so when the time came that they needed me, they chose me, my business went from here to here. And that really hit it for me, right? The approach is converting for nurtures, right? How can I build my database, right? So we capture lots of different opportunities there, sellers and residents, people selling their own home. We're capturing relocation sellers, investor sellers. When we capture them, there's a couple of different techniques here that really work, right? There's this 3x3 of how do we convert them, right? How do we get them? If I don't get them at 9 o'clock on day one, I'm going to try again at 1 o'clock. If I don't get them at 1 o'clock, I'm going to try 5 o'clock. And we'll do that 3 touches over 3 days. And whether that's a telephone call or a text message or whatever, that gets to be up to you to decide. I see here, you see our friend Nick, who is just crushing it. I got to tell you something. I've known Nick for a long time. You guys know Nick as well. I love Nick. He is crushing it right now and just making an impact in the world of real estate with what he's doing. And this is a smart plan that he put in place, right? And he shares everything. That's what I love about Nick. He's got such a big heart. He shares everything with everybody. And this is just the smart plan. You know, it's number one, day one, it's a text followed by an email, followed by another text. We have to have proven techniques, proven models that work to capture those leads and to get in touch with them. And we connect knowing about behavioral styles, right? We know that certain people have assertive personalities or sociable personalities or structured, detail-oriented people or relationship people. And we connect in a way that we listen for what is your behavioral style and how can I communicate with you in a way that's in alignment with that so that I feel like someone that you like, that I feel like someone that you trust, that you feel comfortable with me. Because if the game of sales is influence, you're not going to let me influence you if you're not comfortable with me. And learning about, we teach DISC style in this company, DISC, D driver, which aligns with the assertive personality, I interpersonal, which aligns with the sociable style, S steady, C cautious, which aligns with the structure. We teach DISC. And when you learn how to assess who are you from a behavioral standpoint and how can I modify my behavior to be in sync with yours is really important. We qualify using a guide sheet, right? This is what we call the pre-listing lead sheet. And I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. We have about 5 minutes left. We're probably going to go over a few more minutes here. It's just the nature of how these courses go sometimes. They don't always fit neatly into an hour. This was actually designed to be a 2-hour module that I kind of trimmed up. But I want you to see what a lead sheet looks like. And there's different places where you can find those. In the, trying to get out of this so I can, come on, there you go. In the manual, the Win with Sellers manual, in the appendix, you're going to find some lead sheets there. And in the Ignite toolkit, in the Ignite 2.0 toolkit, you'll find a lead sheet as well. But this is a lead sheet that comes out of the appendix of the lead generation class, the Win with Sellers class. And it's just a guide sheet, right? Guiding you through questions to determine, are you ready to go on to an appointment or should I cultivate you a little bit longer, right? And it has demographics, name, address, all that stuff. How did you hear about me? Sourcing your lead is a critical thing to track as a business person so you know what lead generation techniques are working. Where are you moving? What's important to you about moving there? How soon do you have to be there? I love this question. If we were to sell your home within the next 30 days, would that create a problem for you? I love that question for a couple of reasons. One is it really, really forces them to think about, am I really ready? And many times you'll have people say, wait, hold up. I do want to sell my house, but 30 days, I'm not ready, right? The other thing I love about that question is it implants this idea that this is going to happen quickly. If you hire me, this isn't going to take a long time. And I think that it's really important to use a sheet to guide you through the series of questions the same way every professional does. I recently had a physical about a year ago, and I went to the doctor's office, and there was a series of questions that the doctor was asking, and they were pre-written questions, and he asked them, and he recorded the information. He asked the next one and recorded the information. And I didn't think less of him as a doctor because he didn't memorize the questions. He pulled them off of a guide sheet. It was thorough and it was precise, and it's what I expect a professional to do. Use a lead sheet, right? Use a lead sheet to guide your questions. And so what we find is that we qualify the sellers using this lead sheet that guides the conversation, reveals motivation and timing, and we close when it's appropriate. And here's the real estate math. Some of you have heard me say this before. The new algebra of real estate is ABC equals BS. And what does that mean? Well, there is this adage out there that says, always be closing. And the truth is, in fact, here's the scene from Glengarry Glen Ross. It's kind of a fun sales movie, right? The sort of hapless group of real estate sales agents that couldn't really sell, and they bring in this hard-nosed sales trainer, and he screams, people, always be closing, put down that coffee, coffee's for closers. You know, it was written to be a satire. It was written to be kind of an example of everything that's wrong about sales. That's what this character, this character was written to be. And in some parts of our industry, in some parts of the sales industry, this has actually been embraced as what you should do when it's in fact not at all what you should do. We don't always close. We close when it's time to close, because closing is when we're asking for a commitment of time. We only close when you're ready, willing, and able to meet. When I need to meet, we're going to close. And I'm going to go back to Jeb Blunt, another book on my bookshelf. If you haven't read this one, go get it. Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. Really one of the best sales trainers in the world. Not specifically real estate sales, but sales. And what Jeb says is, look, the reason why people hate salespeople is because we're always forcing them to close too early. We're always asking them to give up their most precious commodity, their time, before it's the right time. And they feel like we're too pushy, and they feel like we're not listening and we're not caring. You close when it's time to meet based on your evaluation of the questions that you ask, being guided by the lead sheet. And if it's not the right time to close, then what do? Then we nurture them, right? Gary says the right approach to closing and asking for the meeting is just ask for it when it's the right time. And in the manual here, there's all kinds of classic closes. There's the direct close, the indirect close, lots of different ways you can do it, right? I'm not going to belabor the way that you ask. What I want to get to is that if it's not the right time, and for so many people, when we evaluate them, it's not the right time to meet, I need to nurture them. I need to nurture them longer. We use smart plans. We know that it's 19 touches to get someone who is kind of in one-way communication to raise their hand and respond back. And 36 touches a year stays involved with them at a sufficient level that they're gonna be ready to take action. When the time comes, they'll choose us, right? Who is the author of Fanatical Prospecting? The name is Jeb Blount. It's actually pronounced Blunt. J-E-B, here, I don't know if that's backwards or not, B-L-O-U-N-T. He has got about 6 different books on that bookshelf. He is one of the best sales trainers in the world. He's got one that I love called Sales EQ, The Emotional Intelligence of Selling. He's got another book that came out on objections. There's lots and lots of things that he's written, and I would encourage you to read what he writes. He also has a podcast called Sales Gravy, which is one of my favorites. Anyway, we know that if we stay in touch consistently, just the way Tim Heyl said, 36 times a year, when the time comes that they need us, we're going to be there. And so we think about our pipeline then, and this is where we're going to wind this down over the next couple minutes here, is we're going to generate leads. And depending on our lead generation tactic, and depending on our style, whether it's marketing or prospecting and how we do it, we'll get people sometimes who are in the very early phase, the awareness phase, where they're nowhere near taking action. You know, internet leads historically are notorious for being here, where somebody is willing to give up their Facebook contact information because they saw something that was interesting enough to click on it, but they're years away from actually taking action. And then as you move people through the funnel, as you move them through it, they develop interest. And now, you know what, I'm getting closer to actually needing to take action. And now I'm kind of paying attention a little differently. And at some point then I'm getting ready to make a decision. Who am I going to list with? And then I finally make that decision. And so we close for the commitment of time when it's time to meet here. But in between, we cultivate by getting a commitment to what's the next step. We're not going to ask you to meet yet. It makes no sense to meet with somebody who's 2 years away from listing their house. What would make sense? What's the logical next thing that you would do? Well, maybe what you do is you'd be willing to have me send you a monthly newsletter that shows what homes are selling for in your neighborhood. Would that be a step you'd be willing to take with me? Sure, not too threatening. I'd be happy to do that. Would you be willing to take a look as you move through this process, perhaps at an article that shows what you could do to improve the value of your home by modifying, doing and things like that while you still have time? Would reading an article like that be a step that you'd be willing to take? Yeah, sure. I'm not ready to meet yet, but I'd read that article, right? Pipeline management, which is a skill that we don't teach well in this industry, which Jeb talks about in depth in Fanatical Prospecting, is we commit to time when it's time to meet. And in between, we ask people to make a commitment to take a step with me to do something. Because pipelines are about movement. Movement is about taking a step and taking another step and taking another step. If we don't move people through the pipeline, our pipelines stall and they become stagnant, and we don't develop leads coming out the bottom that turn into appointments and closings. And so every single interaction with somebody who, what we're calling now in the language of command, is an opportunity. This is what the opportunity model looks like in command when I've determined you're ready, willing, and able to take an action within a time frame that I deem appropriate for me to follow you as an opportunity. Then I'm going to put you in this opportunity section, and we cultivate. And in the cultivation section, what there's going to be is you're going to kind of have an opportunity to sort of categorize them as an A lead, B lead, C lead. And again, I'm not going to get into command right now, but what I would tell you is in this opportunities cultivation section, when I take Mary's seller and I put her in there as an opportunity for me, what I need to do is I need to decide what's the next step that I'm going to ask Mary to take to move forward in this process. And I'm going to put that step in the note section. I haven't found a better place yet to put it in command. I put it as a request that they would put a next step box in there that hasn't come yet. So I'm just going to do it in the individual note section on that client and say, Mary is going to read an article on staging. And then when I follow up next, I'm going to follow up with, did you get a chance to read that article? And I'm going to evaluate the response, because if she did, I'm going to ask her to take another step. If she didn't, I'm going to ask how come. Was it too big of a step? Was she just too busy? What happened? Could I get a smaller step maybe that she would be willing to take? But I've got to get you to move it forward with me and take some action to move forward in the cultivation process here. So we're going to, as one last poll question, we're going to wrap it up. And here's poll question number 2. And this really gets back to closing. What I said was closing is a task that happens at a very specific point in the transaction. When is the right time to close for an appointment? I'm going to ask you to read those and pick the one that you think is right. We're going to go back to the words of Jeb Blunt. We close when? Got 3 of you have answered. There's 13 in the room. We're going to only leave this open for 10 more seconds. So pick one. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, here's the issue. We're going to share this here, right? Overwhelmingly, the response was, we close when the seller is ready, willing, and able to do business. In between that time, and do business means take the action of signing the listing agreement. And before that, that's not to say that there aren't times when it's appropriate to maybe, guide them through. Maybe sometimes people are going to say, look, would you come and take a look at my house and help me decide what repairs to make over the next 6 months while I'm ready to sell? That's taking an action. That's doing business because they're preparing to do something. I don't just meet people willy-nilly to try to establish a relationship. I don't meet them because if they put a face to the name, they're going to have a stronger relationship with me. That's not as efficient and effective as you think. We can cultivate that relationship in other ways and nurture it in other ways that doesn't require the use of our time, or theirs for that matter. We close when it's time to do business and to take action. Okay, last but not least, we're going to ask this question. What's the next step? What ahas do you have from today? We went 10 minutes over, and I apologize for that but I wanted to get through all of this. Any ahas, any takeaways, anything you're thinking differently about as a result of this conversation on lead conversion, or things that you might do differently in your business as a result of this conversation? I'm jumping into the chat box, taking a look at what's in here as well. Don't throw away your leads. Felicia, there is no such thing as a bad lead. There are leads that are further up in the pipeline, but don't throw them away, right? And unless the only reason you get out of my database would be, A, if I saw a death certificate, I'd probably stop bugging you. And B, if you told me to leave you alone, if you said, look, I don't want you to stay in touch with me more, then I'm going to honor that. But otherwise, I'm going to keep figuring out how can I earn the right to stay in a relationship, right? Don't throw away leads. Knowing that closing is for when the client is ready takes the pressure off ABC. Always be closing it. Always get a commitment to the next step. when you're cultivating. It is a huge mistake to get off of a contact, whether it's phone, email, whatever, without a committed, what's the next step? Because absent action, nothing moves forward. If there is no next step plan that you can follow up on, you're not moving people through your pipeline. But we close for the commitment of time when it's time to meet. Going back to my leads who never answered, one of the things, and we'll wrap it here, in the conversation I had with the agent yesterday about his team, he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leads, and they hadn't been followed up, and he was really frustrated. And so what they committed to do was just take this next week and go back into those older, colder leads and see if they could breathe some life into them. And I suspect that you're going to find a percentage of those leads are still out there. They just stopped following them, right? So go back to the ones that never answered and stay in touch. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. I apologize for going over, but we're going to pick this up again on Thursday. And the next place that we're going is the pre-listing, right? We're going to talk about pre-listing next. When we really do determine that it's time to close for an appointment, we want to be super purposeful about how we use that time. And some of that purposefulness is going to be funneled into generating a really important pre-listing package of material that we send in advance of our going there. And we're going to talk on Thursday about how does that look, what goes in that, how do you decide, and how do you make that unique and powerful so that when you get to the consultation appointment, the pre-listing helps pre-sell you and you can really go into consultation mode. That's where we're going to go on Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel.